So, folks, many of you might be aware of a man named Ezra Klein. He has been giving some particularly egregious takes online for a while now, but really peaked in a book that he co-wrote titled Abundance, the book that sparked the abundance movement. And I say movement here with implied air quotes because, as far as I can tell, the abundance movement is a bunch of paid think tank bros trying to push conservative propaganda into left-leaning spaces, right? And one of the takes that Ezra Klein has spawned most recently is the idea that Charlie Kirk was doing politics the right way. Charlie Kirk, a man who advocated against, basically anyone who wasn't a white, straight, cis man. If you take umbrage with that, you can go check out the 3.5 hour long video going over just quotes that Charlie Kirk said. I play the clips. We talk about them a little bit. I play the next clip. We talk about it a little bit. We play the next clip for 3.5 hours. And if you can walk out of that saying that Charlie Kirk did not stand for white supremacy, I do not understand you. Ta-Nehisi Coates wrote for the New York Times in response to Ezra Klein's article about how Charlie Kirk was doing politics the right way, and basically dragged Ezra Klein publicly and viciously. And I'm here for it. I think it was good that he wrote that, and it was good that he communicated that, and it was good. It was just a good article. And Ezra Klein invited Ta-Nehisi Coates onto his show, and we're gonna take a look. We're gonna see what's up with this interview, because my prediction is Ta-Nehisi Coates continues to drag Ezra Klein, but this time to his face. Well, let's see how this goes.
There are two things that are true about what President Donald Trump said at Charlie Kirk's memorial service.
God.
He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie.
One is that it's frightening to see the President of the United States talk this way about his political foes.
I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry.
The other, I think, is that it's an opportunity. I don't think that is a strong politics. And for me, one of the central questions animating the show this year, that has been animating it since the election, is how did we get here? How did we let these people get back into power? What went wrong in our approach to politics?
Can I just stop and say already, this is why the other day we talked about how Ezra Klein is basically the Ben Shapiro, but for conservative liberals, right? It's true. He has the NPR voice down and makes everything he gasps out seem like it's the most important thing you have ever heard. You are about to see an illusion. It's theatrics, and it gussies up a pretty flaccid politics, right? Because I just gotta throw out there, it is okay to dislike people who are in favor of bad things. This isn't a bad thing to say, but it's bad to dislike people who have good politics for their politics. That's bad. It's incongruous. Donald Trump hates the left because the left wants things like healthcare for everyone, housing for everyone, higher taxes on the wealthy, lower taxes on the poor, more services, stronger social safety nets, etc., etc., etc. And to Trump, that's evil. That's evil incarnate. It is absolutely evil and terrible for queer people to have the same rights as straight people, right? And I gotta say, like, I think it is bad to be against people having the same rights in an egalitarian society. I think that's bad. Like, if somebody is out there advocating for an ethno-state, I think that's bad. And I think that they are bad people as a result of what they advocate for. It matters, like, the substance of what you advocate for matters when it comes to, like, the assessment of whether or not you personally like them.
That we ended up here. This has been a conversation I've been engaged in since Charlie Kirk's murder. And I wanted to have it with somebody who has maybe not liked who I've been approaching it. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a writer I admire, somebody I have a genuine friendship with. In the days after Kirk's murder, he published a piece in Vanity Fair, pretty harshly critical of what I had written.
Oh, it was in Vanity Fair. It wasn't even in the New York Times. Also, like, what a banger. What an absolute banger of a headline. Charlie Kirk redeemed, a political class finds its lost cause. Like, holy shit. Like, just taking him out to the wood chipper, man. Like, just... Oh yeah, found the lost cause Ezra Klein is willing to go to bat for, everybody. Like, yeah, that is devastating to someone like Ezra Klein.
He published a piece in Vanity Fair, pretty harshly critical of what I had written. He compared what I was doing there to the whitewashing of the Southern cause after the Civil War. I think it'd be the height of hypocrisy for me to say we need to reach across divides and disagreement and then not talk across my own. So I wanted to talk to Ta-Nehisi about the piece, about the aftermath of Kirk's murder, but also about a disagreement, or a question at least, that I think is about more than Kirk. I think there's something very unsettled in the sort of broad coalition of the left around the work of politics, around who we talk to and when and how. When is that work moral? When is it necessary? When is it a betrayal? As always, my email, EzraKleinShow@nytimes.com. Ta-Nehisi Coates, welcome back to the show.
Thanks. I don't know what number time this is.
I think you're one of the, if you go back to the Vox days, I think you're one of the, you're on the leaderboard for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you, man.
Good to be here, Ezra. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's jump into the disagreement. You wrote a column responding to my column on Charlie Kirk.
Which is so uncomfortable.
It's okay.
We're really not wasting any time here. Let's get right into it.
What was your disagreement with what I wrote after Kirk was assassinated?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to thank you for having me. You know, I know that I've had to read things about myself that, you know, criticize my work. It's never
Ta-Nehisi Coates is I think he's a pretty cool guy.
Easy. And people often have a very, very different response than the one you had, which is to invite me here and to talk it out. So I appreciate that. I want to say that up front. I felt that when I initially read the column, and I guess we should be fully transparent here and say there was a discussion between us privately before there was a public thing.
Yeah, we text.
Yeah, we did. We do text regularly, and we did text about this. So I felt like, having not done the research that I eventually did for the column, there was something off about what I knew about this guy. And the presentation of him as, and I don't want to misquote you here, but as basically a paragon of politics and how politics should be done. So I think I had the same reaction that most ordinary people would have, which is absolute horror at the idea that this guy was somewhere speaking and was killed. But I always think it's like important to differentiate how people die versus how they live. And then after doing the research, I had to be honest with you. That's when it got really, really difficult. When I went past my initial impressions and started like going through all of the clips of the things he said, the way he talked about people, the way he, described groups in ways that honestly, even as I was writing it, I was uncomfortable saying. And so the idea that this guy should be in any way celebrated for how he conducted politics the fact that
I fucking love that Ta-Nehisi Coates is just going right off the bat. Yeah, no, this was fucked. This was some fucked shit.
Just slurred across the board, all sorts of groups of people, and then ran an organization wherein, which appeared to me just a haven of hatred. I would not want that to be a model for my politics. And I know, as we talked between us that, you are not attempting to make a statement for the entirety of it. But I guess I feel like at a certain point, somebody's legacy, or somebody does something that is so large, that it's tough to think about their legacy and take that out of it. And that's how I felt about him.
So I think I want to get at the right level of disagreement here. So I think one thing for me is that
I think you can actually see Ezra Klein flushed. Like I think his feelings are actually hurt here. Like I think his dander is actually up. Rip his entrails out, buddy. I mean, that is exactly what's happening, right? How many of y'all have been exposed to the All In podcast? I'm not sure what that is. Nothing quite as hateful as Christian love. Oh, too true. Too fucking true.
I don't know. For me, the immediate hours after somebody is murdered in public, when you see that sort of grief and horror pouring out of the people who loved him, and many people loved him, my instinct then is to just sit with them in their grief, right? To say, I can, for this moment, find some way to grieve with you, to see your friend the way, or in some version of the way you saw him, right? That's not my view of, the person's whole legacy, but going to people when they're grieving like that and saying, listen, I want to tell you really what I thought of your friend. Just feels like not what you do in a kind of a community. I can see people coming down on both sides of that.
I actually think that actually is a great impulse, that after somebody's been killed, and not just killed, but because we live in the media environment that we live in, that it's seen and that it will live forever, and that person's family, you know what I mean?
That it was being looped in front of all of us.
Jesus Christ.
Which I think has a lot to do with how this was taken.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. And to have to go, to have young kids who have to grow up knowing that is a thing that exists in the world. You know what I mean? And
I'll go one step further on this. One thing I wrote about in that piece that I do worry about is I worry we are already in a cycle of political violence, of mimetic violence. I think about Pelosi. I think about Shapiro. I think about the near assassination on Trump. I think about when after that happened, I thought about me. I thought about you. I thought about all kinds of people I know, right? So I do think there's just something about when violence takes hold that that there's something about it that it begins to breach all lines.
Yeah. So anyway, I guess
that was part of my reaction too.
I think all of that is understandable, but I guess, was silence not an option?
Yeah, silence to me was not.
Oh, fuck. That felt good to hear. Like,
grieving.
I'm sorry. It's not funny, but it is funny. Like, dude is just like, okay, like, so you didn't have to say something nice though. You can just shut the fuck up.
With people. I felt it was important as someone who is liberal, as someone who's a voice, that there are moments like that. Like, I really do feel, and it's funny because you said something like this in your piece, but it was a little bit more offhanded, that political violence like that is an attack on us all.
Right.
And that in that moment, it creates, for me, even if it's very temporary, that it's important in a moment like that to sort of, come together, to try to see other people in their grief, to try to cool things down just a little bit. I guess, given everything you read that Charlie Kirk said, and we probably don't have very different views on the value of the things he said, why do you think he was winning?
I mean, that's not really hard for me to understand. I mean, if I could just back up for a second, I want to say two things. I published a book 10 years ago, Between the World and Me. And one of the constant reactions to that was that it was overly pessimistic about this country. It was overly pessimistic about the future. Why are you so dark, Ta-Nehisi? Why can't you give us any sense of hope? And the reason I would always say is because any sort of sober examination of the history of this country says that those of us who believe in equality, those of us who believe in respecting the humanity of our neighbors and of, everyone, that we're up against some really, really powerful forces of history and powerful narratives. And the implication of that is, however good we felt in 2013, 14, 15, 2008, there will be backlash. People, those of us who were crying in 2008 watching Obama, give that speech, those of us who were so moved by watching him and Michelle and step outside the car and felt so much fear for him, and then when nothing happened, felt so great about that. Those of us who believed that seeing a Black family in the White House mirroring what, some of us felt the best of us was the best that we had to offer, there are other people watching that too. You know what I mean? And I don't take any joy in saying this, but we sometimes soothe ourselves by pointing out that love, acceptance, warmth, that these are powerful forces. I believe they are. I also believe hate is a powerful force. I believe it's a powerful unifying force. And I think Charlie Kirk was a hate monger. I really need to say this over and over again. I have a politic that rejects violence, that rejects political violence. I take no joy in the killing of anyone, no matter what they said. But if you ask me what the truth of his life was, and the truth of his public life, I would have to tell you it's hate. I would tell you, I'd have to tell you it is the usage of hate and the harnessing of hate towards political ends.
Then let me flip that question
100%.
Why are we losing?
We're losing because there are always moments when we lose.
See, that feels very fatalistic to me.
It doesn't feel fatalistic to me. It feels like the truth. And let me express what I mean. I'm Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm the writer. I'm the individual, right? But I am part of something larger, and I've always felt myself as part of something larger. I have a tradition. I have ancestry. I have heritage. What that means is that I do whatever I do within the time that I have in my life, whatever time I'm gifted with. And much of what I do is built on what other people did before then. And then after that, I leave the struggle where I leave it. And then hopefully it's in a better place. Oftentimes it's not. That's the history, in fact. And then my progeny pick it up and they keep it going. I am descended from people who in their lifetime fought with all their might for the destruction of chattel slavery in this country. And they never saw it. They never saw it. In my personal belief system, they died in, defeat, in darkness, And so I guess the privilege that I draw out of this, the honor that I draw out of this, is not that things will necessarily be better in my lifetime, but that I will make the contribution that I am supposed to make. The fact of the matter is, as horrifying as, that the killing of Charlie Kirk was, and as horrifying as the feeling is, this moment that we are in, an era of political violence, and I don't want to sound flip here, political violence is the norm for the Black experience in this country. Mm-hmm. It just is. I don't even mean like the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King variety of it, right? Which is the norm too. You would be hard pressed to have a conversation with a Black person in this country that is a descendant of slavery and not have them be able to reach maybe right here or to tell you themselves, look, my uncle, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they lived in a small town in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in Alabama. They got into some sort of dispute with a white man, and either they were lynched or we had to run. Political violence runs through us. It is our heritage. Is that good? No. Do we valorize it? Absolutely not. Do we minimize it? Absolutely not. But a life free of it is not a thing that's really in reach in my time.
Sometimes I think that having a historical scope that wide can make the present too deterministic.
Oh my God.
So to
Stop
me, I
getting
look
high
at the
off
last,
of your own farts, you ass.
8, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see having happened is we, the coalition I am in, the things I believe in, lost ground. And people determinedly worked to make that so. Charlie Kirk worked to make that so successfully, right? I think that when he began going to college campuses and putting out a sign at a table, what he was eventually going to build was not obvious, right? I think he worked. I think he was a successful political actor. And I think that from when in 2016, we lost to Donald Trump the first time, very narrowly, won the popular vote, right? And then in 2020, we almost lost to him and began seeing we were losing a bunch of voters we thought we were fighting for, right? Losing more working class voters, losing non-white voters, right? Something was changing, but we won, so okay. And then in 2024, we really got our asses handed to us. And we let a much more dangerous form of politics fully erupt. And I think that reflects strategic decisions they made. I think it reflects decisions we made. So I think for me, it's not enough to say we lost, there are backlashes, sometimes you lose. I think it requires like a very fundamental rethinking, like a disciplined strategic rethinking of what have we been doing? Why are people preferring this to us? And I do think that is like, it opens up into something more that I think that there is a practice of politics here that in a narrow sense, I was talking about Kirk, but in a broad sense reflects to something that I thought was going to be an argument stretching across this show for like a year, right? I think more of it came out in this than I had intended probably. But I think in many ways we've stopped doing politics. We've written a lot of people off. And in writing them off, we are losing and we are unable to protect ourselves, unable to protect them, just unable to make good change in the world.
Can you say more about that writing them off, please?
Yeah. Why don't we start it here if we want to talk about writing them off? I've been obsessing recently for a piece I've been writing about the Hillary Clinton deplorables comment, and I want to play it.
You know, to just be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up. He has given voice to their websites that used to only have 11,000 people, now have 11 million. He tweets and retweets. They're offensive, hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric. Now, some of those folks, they are irredeemable, but thankfully they are not American.
What do you think when you hear that?
She probably shouldn't have said it.
But you think it's true?
I mean, it's probably not how I would say it, but, you know, I mean, there are things that I would say, you know. I probably would say what I said earlier, you know, in the interview about the force of, and I mean, as I've been saying this probably since as long as we've been talking.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not, I just want to be clear about something. I shouldn't be running for president of the United States. You know what I mean? And my expectations for the rhetoric of writers, intellectuals, journalists, et cetera, is very, very different than what the expectation should be for people who expect to hold office.
Yeah. So I agree with, right? I think that there are different jobs in all this. But when I say we began writing people off, I think that's something that happened. And I think something I saw in this debate, but kind of like underneath it, was that the work of politics, of bridging over a lot of profound, fundamental, moral disagreements, I think became somewhat demeaned, diminished. It began to seem like, in many cases, a betrayal to people. The tent shrunk. The people I feel more comfortable with wielding power shrunk. And I think what Clinton was saying there came from somewhere. It came from, you know, the sort of culture that had emerged. It got worse over time. And then I think it really contributed to us losing. And meanwhile, this is why when I say, like in that initial piece, there was something that I respected in what Kirk was doing, like going in, having debates, using them opportunistically. A lot of people have thrown back at me that, oh, he wasn't debating to find truth. Of course he wasn't debating to find the truth. He was doing politics. He was trying to persuade people. And I've watched on our side, not opportunistic engagement, but a lot of, I would say, counterproductive disengagement.
Would you like to see one of us put up a sign outside of, say, some white evangelical church in Alabama, debate me on abortion, and then use that content to say such and such smashes, you know what I mean, church parishioner here, such and such owns church parishioner.
I would like to see.
Would you like
I would like to see people on
our
our side. Yeah, go to evangelical churches, go to places that feel unfriendly, have conversations, and look. I put things up on YouTube. They're fairly successful, not the best of the business, and I don't use capital letters destroys in them. I think you can do it more aligned to hopefully our value structure, our political approach, our political aesthetic, at least the one that I believe in. I shouldn't overuse the term "our" here, but we weren't doing that either.
I don't know that we weren't. I know I, for instance, I have. I don't know if it's on YouTube anymore, but I received an invitation, for instance, I think about when I went up to West Point and I had to go up there and talk about Between the World and Me. I had to challenge them very, very directly about what it meant to have, at that time, Confederate memorials up there, and to, talk about, a Confederate, I can't remember, what the motto is exactly, but basically it's an argument against lying and what it meant,
I've worked in this space for a while now, and the idea that people aren't going out and talking to conservatives, that people aren't, going to, say, CPAC and talking with conservatives, that at these large gatherings of conservative-minded folks, that people aren't going out and talking to them, that's just not true. That's just not true. There are all kinds of left-leaning creators that go out and make content and talk to these people. And Ezra Klein is just so isolated in his bubble that he thinks, obviously no one's doing that, because no one with the following of Charlie Kirk is going and doing it. There are on-the-ground reporters in, almost every town in America, every city in America, who are going out and interviewing these people, who are going out and seeing what these people think. And there are content creators in every corner of the country who are going out and interacting with these people on a daily basis and finding their ideas wanting. And I just... Walter Masterson, Good Liars, Jordan Klepper, excellent examples of this. Emma Vigeland would go out and interview Trump supporters for years. There are people who go out and do this. And it just seems to me that, there is almost a fetishization of that performativity. That in order to understand the ideas these people have, you need to go and talk to them and just see they're real people. And it's we understand that they're real people. We also understand that their ideas are bad. I'm sorry, if your idea is, if you're a rural American and your idea is you want less taxes on the billionaires and more taxes on the working class of America, or if your idea is that you want Medicaid cut to the bone so that your rural hospital closes, I'm sorry, those are bad ideas. They're just bad ideas. And Ezra seems incapable of reckoning with the fact that these are bad ideas. It's not just the performative nature of presenting those ideas to the world, though that can matter in certain circumstances. It's that the ideas are bad, and they are destructive, or they're hateful. And yes, part of politics is performance. That part is true. But the performance that he is requesting here is one that benefits conservatives. And I think he knows that. I think that's why it's incorporated into his project, into his worldview, into his writings lately. It's because Ezra Klein is a conservative. He's not a neoliberal. He's not a left-leaning fence-sitter. He's not a milquetoast lib. He is a conservative. And he can hem and haw, gay marriage was okay. He can hem and haw about that, but ultimately, this shit is conservatism, repackaged to be, palatable to the dumbest brainlets on the left. That's right, I'm talking about the neolibs.
to have that there and have those grand historical lies. I mean, we had a really, really great interaction. I don't know that, I know everybody didn't agree with me. It would never occur to me, and I think it actually insults the dialogue to take that and say, Ta-Nehisi owns West Point cadets.
Do you really not recognize the kind of culture I'm talking about here? Like, really?
I'm sorry, say more. No, what do you mean?
I think there really was a move towards the sort of approach Clinton is offering here. I think we began to pull back. I really do.
But maybe it would help if you...
I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry.
Like, really? Do you really not recognize...
To take that and say, Ta-Nehisi owns West Point cadets.
Do you really not recognize the kind of culture I'm talking about here? Like, really?
I'm sorry, say more. No, what do you mean?
I think there really was a move towards the sort of approach Clinton is offering here. I think we began to pull back. I really do.
But maybe it would help if you define the we.
I will define the we,
like,
right? Because I actually think this is a very hard thing about talking about political parties,
right?
Because they're diffuse,
right?
It's a lot of people doing a lot of things all at once. But I think of the huge backlash to Bernie Sanders for going on Joe Rogan's show because Rogan was transphobic, right? Such a big backlash that when I defended him, I became myself a Twitter trending topic,
right?
To Elizabeth Warren for going on Bill Maher's show. Bill Maher's Islamophobic, right? There were protests at Netflix when they brought on Dave Chappelle, right? I think there was a politics of content moderation that took hold that was more about enforcing boundaries of what, were and were not ideas we should be engaged with, than about engaging with them, again, even if opportunistically.
He is saying we have been too mean to the fascist conservatives. We have been too adamant that trans people deserve rights. And it really is that simple. It really is that simple for this motherfucker. Absolutely. Just unspeakable, man.
And when I go back to something I was saying to you a minute ago, I am in a process right now of thinking we failed, right? We lost. The loss is having terrible consequences. What do we need to rethink? How do we become competitive again in places where we're not? And I think there is something in here. Do people feel like, even if they disagree with us on some things, that they have a place with us? And my experience going around the country, talking to people, I've been on a lot of, right of center podcasts lately, is that, rightly or wrongly, like what they took and something that really empowered Trump in the last election was a sense that they didn't. And like we were against them. And if so, they were going to be against us. And I think that's in the end doing politics badly.
So I think two things. I think about how much you argued that like Biden shouldn't run again. What if he doesn't earlier and you have a Democrat who wins the presidency? Like there are other big explainers that I can see for it. You know what I mean? That don't feel so diffuse. The other thing is, and I know you don't want to talk historically, but, when you say fatalism, like I take that to mean that what's the point of fighting? But I think that misapprehends the philosophy here. It's not that you know what's going to happen.
I thought you were kind of off with the conservative call, but you might have a point. He's been on this arc for a while now, guys. Like this is what he is. He's gone mask off, and he's just like, yeah, I'm conservative, but I like the cool things, like gay rights. I'm a cool cat.
Donald Trump is going. It's that you don't underestimate what you are up against. It's actually kind of the opposite. I mean, man, you yourself wrote these articles about how high the level of racial resentment was. That this country, or some segment of it, was so, as the term was used at the time, racially resentful. I call it racist, but racist, that it flooded down to Barack Obama's dog, Bo. Mm-hmm. That's not a small amount of power. Like that's not a small force. And so, just really quickly getting back to Charlie Kirk, like, I would watch those clips of him saying those things, man, and I would see how people would cheer and get charged by it. People get activated by hate. It's a very, very, very strong force. And so I don't think it requires you to feel that you will eventually lose. On the contrary, I think it requires you to feel that even if you do lose, you have this kind of steadfastness, you know what I mean, to keep going.
This is a great point. And I think I really saw it, in some ways more in Trump's first term, but I see it now too, which is the worse from your perspective, my perspective, the other side gets, the more people want their reaction to sort of be, and their strategy to be emotionally constant with how they're feeling about it. Because these people are so bad, there can be no quarter, right? I had somebody we both know, I'll say an eminent academic of one form or another, emailed me after these pieces and just say to me, like, we are not on the same side anymore, right? The what I was doing, it was too far, right? Like, we are just not on the same side, if I could say these things. I have a feeling right now that we are closer to genuine national rupture. Certainly we've been in my lifetime, right? The idea that this experiment, that America could topple into something else, into something much worse, into some kind of new extended regime, feels very real to me, right? I remember when I was on the Why We're Polarized book tour.
I interviewed you for it.
You did, yeah. The end of that book is this recitation of what happened in the 1960s, the political assassinations, the violence in the streets, like what the state was doing, what was happening. But on the book tour, what I would say is my nightmare scenario is that level of violence and fracture with these kinds of parties, where politics is not for all of its flaws, a calming force, because like the views are diffuse across the two parties, but an accelerant. And I think we're much more now in the world I was fearing. Okay, so I think it should make you think, okay, what is some kind of de-escalation before you get to rupture look like? But the other is that there are a lot of people who live in places we used to win not that long ago. So I've been thinking about Obamacare. When Obamacare passes, there are Democratic senators in Arkansas, in Louisiana, in West Virginia, in Missouri, in Indiana, in North Carolina, in South Dakota, in North Dakota. And I've been thinking that I think for a lot of us, to twist the line about capitalism, it has become easier to imagine the end of the country than winning a Senate seat in Missouri or Arkansas.
That is such a failure of imagination. That is such a failure of I'm sorry, you can imagine a thriving media ecosystem where Democrats are like going and debating Sunday morning churchgoers, something that would definitely end well and not at all terribly. But you can't imagine a world in which we win a fucking Senate seat in some of the most easily winnable places on the planet. Like, I'm sorry, the reason Democrats don't win seats in Missouri or Arkansas is because they do not put money into trying to win that. They do not put messaging out there to try and win that. They do not do shit to win those areas. It's not a crazy issue to figure out here.
And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. So I think a couple of things about that. First of all, I just want to bring in the historical perspective. Not that long ago, I can remember when Obama won. And I believe you would remember this too. And there were all of these pieces about the end of conservatism and the end of the Republic.
Like, I'm sorry. The secret to winning those areas, by the way, in case anyone's wondering, is run on pro-worker policies. None of this, like, means testing bullshit that turns off voters, and we know it turns off voters. And also, put money into the goddamn campaign. Get people excited about it. Get people believing it. The secret is politicians doing their fucking job.
Yep.
Party.
The defeatism
you don't know
is
how it's going to go.
Awful.
Nobody really. It doesn't mean you shouldn't think about how it's going to go.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you shouldn't, but no one really. I mean, again,
and in 2005, there were all these pieces about the end of the Democratic Party.
Yes, it was.
Right, Democrats had lost touch with the heartland.
Yeah.
Right, they were never going to get it back.
That's right. And so I think it's always like important to keep that in the background. Look, I have, just in terms of bridging gaps and everything, I have a basic level of respect that I accord to everybody. You know what I mean? I want to say what I have to say. I don't want to shrink back from it. You know what I mean? But I do think on a basic level, there's a respect that has to be had for people that I disagree with, right? At the same time, I recognize that part of my audience, and I would say an important part of my audience, is people who have never enjoyed that respect. You know what I mean? People who, in fact, are subjects of the kind of hate that Charlie Kirk was harvesting. And I can't ever, A, contribute to making them feel like they've been abandoned. And B, I can't ever stand by and watch somebody do that. And in the name of unity or whatever, act like that's not happening, because there are real consequences. And so it's like, when I read his words towards trans people, Jesus, when I read, you know what I mean, the language towards Haitians specifically, which was very, very, Haitians will become your masters if you don't elect Trump. I mean, this is very, very familiar to me. You know, it's this idea of Haitians coming into the country or immigrants raping your daughters. I mean, this was really, really, really dark stuff.
It's also blazingly obvious stuff. Like, if you spend any amount of time to try and understand the kind of rhetoric Charlie Kirk regularly deployed, you would understand. And Ezra Klein either didn't do that and had no idea what Charlie Kirk was about, or he knows and he's just carrying water for Republicans, which is my argument. Ezra Klein is a conservative. Like, what Ta-Nehisi Coates here is pointing out is like, yeah, this is some of the oldest school racism and bigotry around.
Core of this country. And so I feel like for Haitian immigrants that are in, Ohio, who are living under the weight of this, for trans kids who, you know what I mean, are dealing with, being, I don't even want to use the term bullied, beaten up, attacked, threatened. You know what I mean? It's very, very important to me, given the post I have, to say, I see you, but also this dude was wrong. And I'm all for unifying. I'm all for bridging gaps, but not at the expense of my neighbor's humanity. I just can't.
I think the thing we go to there, right? Not at the expense of my neighbor's humanity. Because I've gotten a lot of that in email, right? Like, how am I supposed
Maybe that should tell you something, man. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you on that one. Like, if you're getting a lot of feedback that you need to, I don't know, treat people with more humanity, like, people are telling you something there, buddy. to
talk to these people? How am I supposed to deal with these people who are denying my humanity?
I'm not against talking to them about it. I'll talk to you very clearly.
Yeah, sure.
I have no problem with that.
I guess the place where I'm not even 100% sure if we disagree, if you just like sort of see your role differently, right? I think that in losing as badly as we have imperiled trans people terribly.
Yes.
Politics is for power.
Joe Biden did that.
Politics is for power. And so I think that the question I am just genuinely struggling with isn't how to have like a great kumbaya moment. But I think it is taking seriously that something we're doing is not working. I mean, I had Sarah McBride, who's the first trans member of Congress on the show. And, you know, we were talking about every single survey you can offer on like trans rights has gone in the wrong direction the past couple of years, right? We've just begun to lose that argument terribly. And that has put people in real danger. So I take your point when you say, look, I want people to feel seen in my writing. And I want people to feel seen in my writing and my podcasting. But I think the place I'm trying to push towards is I think that there is a diminishment of the political coalition building that we now need to do, because we have come to the view that a pretty wide variety of people are in some ways kind of deplorables. I think it's weakened a bit in the last couple of years.
I would never use that language. Jesus Christ.
But
like, that's not, so when you ask me about that Hillary Clinton, that's what, like, I would never say it like that.
That's great. I think it's good that you wouldn't say it like that, but and I'm not saying.
I don't even think that, by the way. Like, right. I don't even focus on people that, look, I am at war with certain ideologies and ideas, and I want them expunged. I want to turn them into phrenology. That's what I want. But I don't want the people, you know what I mean, out. Like, when you start talking about who people are and their bones, like that.
So in a way, I'm not sure. I mean, in a way, I think we're saying something not too dissimilar here. I guess
I'm not convinced about that, Ezra. I'm not convinced about that whatsoever, man.
Place where I felt a lot of pushback, and maybe this was not your pushback, right?
True, Nathan Nielsen, true.
Was, the first piece I can just sort of, like, I accept that there's a disagreement on like what to do in the 24 hours after a death. Like, you feel like I was whitewashing the guy, and I felt like I was sort of.
Do.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do.
It's very upsetting.
I know you do. The second piece I did, which I think you saw, was more about this question of what are we going to do living here in sort of two types of disagreement, right? One with a right that where Charlie Kirk has become sort of the center of it, right? He's not unusual for the MAGA coalition. He's a sort of uniting force within it, and the kind of things he believed and the way he did his politics. And then two, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to be here with people who are like halfway there, right? What does it mean to be in this political community together? What do you think about that question?
About how to live together?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think it's a truth. You know what I mean? I think it's it's a foregone, like we are. I really, really believe that, there's no real choice about this. I'm not renouncing my American citizenship. They're not renouncing their American citizenship. So this then, as far as I'm concerned, is a contest of ideas and narratives. Again, all I can go to is my role as a writer. And my role as a writer is to state things as clearly as I possibly can, to make them in such a way that they haunt, to state truths, and to reinforce probably the animating notion of my politics. And that is that all humanity is equal and is worthy of that. And I actually think all of the sort of political and policy positions are, that I probably find myself in sympathy with, are attempting to affect that, in the real world. And so, and again, I'm putting aside your piece, but I'm just thinking about the moment we're in. When I hear or see people who are honored and commemorated in such a way so that they almost become a national religious figure, and then I see their content, and I see that their content is actively destructive to humanity, I have to draw a line there. Like, I think, like, for me, like, the bigger question is, where are the lines? You know what I mean? And I think there's no problem with saying, listen, you can't hurl epithets at people. You're out if you do that. I'm sorry. Look, you want to have a debate about whether we should have affirmative action, in colleges? I'm here for it. You want to have a debate?
What does it mean to be on the other side of the line?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
What is it? So once somebody's on the other side of the line,
right? What
does that mean for you?
For instance, once you think it's okay.
No.
I'm trying to make this concrete.
Yeah, no, I am too.
Yes.
Once for whatever the definition of the line is,
right?
What does it mean for you for somebody to be on the other side of it, right? Not somebody who just died,
right?
But somebody still living,
right? If you think it is okay to dehumanize people, then conversation between you and I is probably not possible.
And so what do you do with the fact that so many people think that is okay?
I think what you try to do is, again, this is the difference, right? Like, I don't necessarily have the crystal ball to say that in this time, I'm going to be able to convince a majority of people that, for instance, let's just take the thing that's hot right now. Trans folks are human beings and deserve humanity. Although I think most people know that you shouldn't say what he said. Like, that shit is rude. It's just rude to talk to people like that. And I think most people know that. So as I'm thinking my way through the question, I actually think that's not a hard line to draw.
I gotta be honest. I'm not saying a lot because I'm really fucking enjoying Ta-Nehisi Coates dog walking Ezra Klein to his face about how, like, yeah, it should be fundamentally surface level obvious that this is not how you treat other human beings with respect and dignity. And, like, I feel like Ezra Klein is just trying to sidestep this a lot, which is why I really appreciate Ta-Nehisi Coates bringing it back around to this point. Because Ezra does not want to talk about this. Ezra does not want to talk about trans rights because he knows it makes him look like a massive piece of shit. Oh, I think Ezra is self-aware enough to know that this is a dog walk. He knows it's making his job a lot harder.
I think not calling people out of their name, I think that's actually a basic value that most people have. And I think people who think it's not, who are pushing that, are actually themselves on the other side of the line.
But so I want to hold on this for a minute, because I do think this is like a very
and that's
core
different
question.
From policy, Ezra.
Yeah, I understand it's different than policy.
That's different than policy.
I think that one just reality is the president of the United States is a person who, in his comportment as a human being on the public stage, I would have said in 08, in 12, in 16, should be on the other side of the line.
Yeah.
I think he's a person who does not act with any sense of public or even personal decency.
Right.
And then he won in 16, lost sort of narrowly in 20 and then won in 2024. And I think the thing that has led to for me is recognizing that I don't get to draw the line. Now, it doesn't mean I don't have one in my own heart, but I think that is the thing that I am struggling with, which is not only is he clearly, for most people, or a lot of people, plurality of the voters in the last election, not somehow way over the line, but that means it's a lot of people who are willing to accept things that I thought we would have found unacceptable. If you had told me, I would have thought that the way he acts in public is unacceptable, and it's not. And so I think for me, and this goes back to maybe the culture that you feel didn't exist, but I feel did, that there was a view that we could sort of work with politics with drawing these lines, that there are people who are going to be inside them and outside them, and we could work that way. And I think that I am working with the question of what happens if you don't believe that, if you don't control the line. What I see is any line that existed at all collapsing. So I'm watching Holocaust revisionism on the biggest right-wing podcasts. Right. I'm watching Tucker Carlson turn into, what I would describe as a white nationalist and become an absolute dominant force on the right, bigger than he ever was.
And we need to talk to them.
Smarmy libertarian phase. And this stuff is real appeal, as you said, right? That's not a surprise on some level. It's just something you have to deal with. And so that's where this question of the line drawing, I have lines of what I think should and should not be acceptable, but those lines clearly have no relationship to my country, the politics. And I think I've been asking the question without really having an answer. I want to be honest about this. What follows from that?
I think you do have a line.
I'm sure I do.
I think there are things, for instance, that I could say that would make you say it's no point in Ta-Nehisi coming up on and being on this podcast. And likewise, there are things you could say. Obviously, I would say it's no point in me talking about this.
Yeah. I'm saying, what happens if 35% of the country, 40% of the country, the dominant political force in the country is inside that? Does that change anything, or no? The line just holds?
No, welcome to Black America. That's our history. The line we have drawn in general has not been majoritarian politics, unfortunately. That's just been what it is, And at the times that it's been majoritarian politics, people have done things and, fiddled with government or done, extremely violent things to make it not so, How
do you deal in that answer? How do you deal with Trump really substantially increasing his share of the black vote?
Actually, I think where he is about where actually Republicans tended to be before Barack Obama. So I'm a little less. There's a conservative portion of our community that's always voted Republican. And I think, obviously, I think sexism is a very, very real force. I don't think it's completely explanatory, but the idea that there is, say, 20% of black men who are fundamentally conservative, that doesn't really surprise me too much.
But I guess let's take, because I think this is a hard case. I think from your perspective and from my perspective, where we probably don't believe hugely different things, a huge amount of the country, right? A majority of the country believes things about trans people, about what policy should be towards trans people, about what language is acceptable to trans people, that we would see as fundamentally and morally wrong. And
I love this, man. It's insane. Let's look. Sure, we agree. We all agree here that treating trans people this way is fundamentally wrong. But a lot of people agree that that's how we should treat trans people. So, the people who think it's wrong can suck our nuts.
And what politically, not in a column or something, but politically, should our
look, in order to get civil rights, in order to really demonstrate the level of just what the fuck insanity that Ezra Klein is spawning right here. You have to understand, this would be like saying something along the lines of, well, look, advocating for the civil rights of African Americans is really, really hard. So, you know what we gotta do? We have to adopt the racist attitudes of the segregationists and the supporters of Jim Crow. Look, I'm sorry. We're not adopting those frames because we're racist. It's because they're racist, and in order to reach them and make them less racist, we need to become more racist. That's fucking insane. That is just an insane idea. That makes no fucking sense. It doesn't make sense when you apply it to African Americans. It doesn't make any sense when you apply it to trans people. God, it's so frustrating to see it unfold, but it is. I'm finding this incredibly cathartic.
Relationship with those people be? Do we win them over? Do we compromise with them? Like, this feels like a very salient question. The Republican Party is going to make sure this is a relentlessly salient question.
Right.
So
I agree with that.
Where does the approach leave us? Right? Where do we go on that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. Look, I think a couple things. I think, again, look, my tradition is the only thing I have a reference point for, so I'm sorry to keep going back to this. But when I look at the times that we have lost, if I think specifically about the Black tradition, for instance, it's hard for me to say politically they did something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, Reconstruction falls. What was the thing that should have been done? On the contrary, I see, a kind of courage that I wish we had today in a lot of people. You know what I mean? I see people willing to die and take bullets all the time. You know what I mean? What more could Ida B. Wells have done, to get the anti-lynching bill passed? I mean, here is somebody that, was banished from Tennessee on threat of being killed after she saw her friends, murdered and lynched. And one of the things I will say is, when I look back at that long tradition, and I look back in the times that people have won and the places they've won, it's often not been their heroism that was the decisive factor ultimately. It's often not been their strategy that was the decisive factor. Folks look back at the civil rights movement, for instance, and they talk about how brilliant it was to do the sit-ins and, use mass media in the way that Martin Luther King used mass media, the appearance. All of that's true. But if we don't have World War II, and the planet does not get a view of how horrific it can be when you decide you're going to eliminate people based on their traits, civil rights movement happened? I don't know. I think windows open and close. And so I think some of this is up to the decisions that politicians make. I think some of it is also up to what is happening in the broader mass culture at the time. I think all this kind of, works together. I'm not against, this kind of strategizing. That I think that has to happen. But I think you also have to recognize like how broad the world is when you say politics.
Ta-Nehisi Coates is, he's fucking aces.
That you have actually, I think, been a very prime mover in this. I think there's been a period, particularly on the left, in which the Civil War, pre it, post it, the writings of that time, the people of that time, have become a sort of a rooting period, a place where we sort of go back and look and think about who are we, what was revealed about us. I'm taking nothing away from that.
Right.
But that's obviously a period where politics ultimately fails. I actually think, and I've thought about this a lot in reaction I have read in the last couple of weeks, I've thought a lot about how many people believe we are already in a cold civil war. That we are in a time that we are dealing with divisions and questions. I see it on the right, for sure. I hear it on the left. I have a lot of email that's like, we need a national divorce. How that's going to be effectuated, never exactly clear.
They
do use that.
Do people you respect say that to you?
Well, yes, actually, I will say that, but I'm not going to.
What are you talking about? Who is telling you that we need to like break apart the country and you respect them? What are you talking about? You fucking clown. You fucking joke of an intellectual.
People say things to me that are off the record and I shouldn't say it, but You don't believe that though, right? You don't believe we are at a point. I think this is really important. I was curious what you would say to this question. You don't believe we are at a point where the next 10, 20, 30 years can't be shaped by decisions we would understand as within normal politics, within elections and legislation and organizing and so on.
No.
Good. I think that's great.
I mean, look, that could happen.
Yeah.
That could happen. But I guess the broader thing.
Coates is just like, yeah, that could happen. Hypothetically, maybe. I could be like struck dead by lightning inside of the studio. That is technically possible.
I am thinking about is how much does this era stand out in the long sweep of American history?
Yeah.
It's bad.
Well, so this is actually,
but it wouldn't make my list for the worst.
No, I agree with you. I'm where you are on this,
right,
to just be super clear.
Okay.
But I actually think one reason then the amount we focus on the Civil War period is tricky is because that's a period when it didn't work like that, right? You actually had to go over the cliff of that and have the war. I've been thinking a lot about, because I've been reading a lot about McCarthyism. So I've been thinking about that whole period. And you just sort of brought up the World War II as, sort of a generator of the politics that allows us to have the Great Society, the Civil Rights Act, et cetera. I think another way of sort of glossing that is you have the rise of Red Scare politics, which predate McCarthy. You have Joseph McCarthy, who is just for a period an unbelievably dominant force.
It's insane.
Everybody who challenges him loses.
That's right.
He becomes a complete kingmaker. He's eventually boxed out and beaten by Dwight Eisenhower, a sort of center-right, very, very anti-communist politician, but who can sort of take the center from McCarthy. But then it's like, what happens next? Nixon, who is the genteel red baiter to McCarthy's non-genteel red baiter, runs in the next election. He's beaten by JFK, who's a very center-left, very anti-communist, sort of runs to Nixon's right on communism. And he does it with Lyndon Johnson, on the bottom of the ticket, sort of representing Southern politics in the Democratic Party. It's a very, very, in a way, checkered series of moves that are accepting huge amounts of McCarthyism at that time. And yet it does sort of lead to political power that is then wielded in a very, very different way within fairly short order. I take from this, I've been thinking about this because I think we're sort of in a new McCarthyism, some lessons on how politics can work and like the give and the take of it. We've been sort of brought up the Civil War a bunch, but what do you take from this period?
I take something that we've kind of been circling for this entire conversation, which is that the role of politicians and the role of writers, intellectuals, et cetera, is very, very different. Politicians do things that I wouldn't do. I don't, for instance, I don't hold JFK or RFK up, you know what I mean, as the people
me
I
neither.
would. Right. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of JFK Camelot revisionism.
But, I guess...
It's not a very good president.
That's like a separate thing from whether, you know what I mean, why politics happens the way they do. Let me give you an instance that often also comes up. That's not the Civil War, and that's the New Deal, right? Like, I think there is a pretty strong argument that the New Deal not a strong argument, but it's pretty clear that the New Deal did quite a bit to create the social safety net, expand, create an American middle class, right? That's true. Did FDR want to, in his heart, exclude Black folks in the way that they were excluded from it? No. That was the price of getting the thing done. I understand that as politics. But were I there in that time, it would be incumbent on me to yell at FDR to not do that. And I just think that's really, 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 really important. We don't all have the same role. When I wrote Case for Reparations, it was not my expectation, nor did I even think it would be politically intelligent for like Barack Obama to go up and yell, "I'm for reparations." You know what I mean? But that's different than, you know what I mean, my role. Yeah.
I guess the substructure of a bunch of what I am saying, which may or may not be in argument with you. It's just right. When I texted you to come on, I was like, I've been thinking about what the underlying arguments are here. So you're kind of getting this spilling out of my brain. I think that there is a work of politics that for a bunch of different reasons has become demeaned. And I think, and this does not speak well of the people, so to speak, in power doing it, but I think that they are not doing it well. I think the culture around them, I think politicians are not always leaders. I think they're often followers. And I think that the idea that kind of political coalition building across these gigantic differences, building across public opinion, both not just as you wish it existed, but as it exists, has become, seen and like treated as often betrayal, cowardice, moral fallibility. It's not, I think it's fine to say people got different roles. And in fact, it's good for intellectuals to criticize the politicians. But my view is that the political practice became too weak. I don't think that was true for Obama. I went back preparing to talk to you and I read your piece, My President Was Black.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful piece.
Thank you.
And it's very much in this tension, right? Where you say quite a bit, like, it would have been a bad idea for Barack Obama to say the things I mean?
No, my entire identity and profession mandates that I don't.
No, but that's what so much of this is, Sake Tanuki. That's what so much of this is. It is just a non-stop cavalcade of like Ta-Nehisi Coates saying something that is blisteringly obvious, and then Ezra Klein doing his best mental gymnastics to avoid engaging with the substance of it.
I'm saying here, very much in this tension, right? Where you say quite a bit, like, it would have been a bad idea for Barack Obama.
Yeah, because different people can say different things more effectively. Come on, dude.
To say the things I am saying here.
Yeah.
To do the things in some ways I wish he had done. It would have been, that politics wouldn't have worked. There would have been no Obama presidency and his presidency would not have been successful. And I think I've been thinking about that line, right? In my own work and just in the political culture as I see it, that line between the sort of intellectual, analytical work.
The line between love and a battle. The line between war and hate. The line between... Nay, the line that demands us ask, can love bloom on a battlefield? Da-na-na-na-na-na, da-na-na-na-na-na. All right.
And the actual, like, work of politics.
It's just,
how do we live?
It's just such melodramatic tripe from this man who's just like fumbling around doing his best to make it seem like he's not a racist sack of shit or like he's not peddling conservative ideas. It's nuts. Yeah, the fart monger cometh, and he wants to assure you that his farts smell like fragrant roses.
Here with each other work, right? Which I think is actually honorable work. And I think feels right now to me like morally urgent and necessary. And not just over disagreement, just the whole thing being done in a strategic and disciplined sense.
The line between man
I think
and
one
rat.
of the things I've thought about is the need to actually raise the status of just like old-fashioned politics. And I think I've been surprised to find myself feeling that way. But I think one way the second Trump term has changed me is
it's made me a conservative.
This, right? I'm not putting this on you. I think what got built, for all of its flaws in the back half of the 20th century, was much more fragile than I'd understood. Not just like the legislation or any of that, but the actual sense of like what you could and could not do, what we would and would not accept. And I've just like the sense that we can just tumble all the way back has become much more real to me. And so the work that people did to begin to build those guardrails and like how hard that actually was, and the disappointment we eventually felt, I feel like we began to take something actually quite beautiful for granted. Or only.
I can't believe this, man. Imagine sitting across from the table from Ta-Nehisi Coates, a man who is straight up talking about how, like, the racist policies and histories of this country have negatively impacted him. He is literally just maybe 10 minutes past welcoming you to like the experience of being marginalized in America, and you're just like, you know what was goddamn beautiful? The politics of 1955. Like, just like, what the hell? What are you doing, bro? Oh my God.
See what wasn't there as opposed to what was. And it's forced a little bit of, for me, like, how did they do it? How did they get out of the last one of these?
You know, I'll just say, and I think I'm speaking for a broader community here. We are not happy, but we are not surprised, man. And again, the reason why we go back to Reconstruction and the Civil War is because it is, before the 1960s, the only glimpse at the possibility of a real democracy in this country. And it happened. And in some places, it was actually quite successful. You know, you have people who, you know, had been enslaved, who are written off as illiterate fools, who, you know what I mean, serving in legislatures.
No, it's not even baseline analysis. Like, Ezra Klein is just deliberately obfuscating. Like, he's not doing analysis here. He just sat and was like, you know, we had something really beautiful in the 90s. And you fucking know that, like, Ta-Nehisi Coates is just sitting there being like, are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck are you talking about? And you know,
I want Mehdi Hassan to be across from Klein so bad. 0 fucks would be given.
God, I want to see that. I really want to see that. You know, one of my biggest gripes that has only increased with time is that Sam Seder was too nice to this man. Like, Sam Seder sat across from Ezra Klein and was like, heard Ezra Klein say, no, it's totally fine to build like apartment buildings that aren't up to code next to highways without filtration systems. And sure, that will mean that the people who live in that low-income housing and affordable housing structure, sure, it will mean that they will die earlier due to preventable, lung cancers from the pollution they inhale. But you know that it's worth it to get the buildings up. And it's just like, It isn't the binary choice like that. We can just build it with the filtration system. That red tape is only a big deal in your flawed view of politics. In the real world, all you need to do is marshal enough people with the political will to tax the rich enough to get the filtration systems in those fucking buildings. It's not an either or. It's not either you have the building plus the regulations, or without the regulations, or you have no building. You just get the political will to tax appropriately so you can afford the building that isn't going to kill people. Like, this man needs to be swirlied verbally in the marketplace of ideas.
And actually, you know, with
also Sake Tanuki, thank you for the 5 tier 1 subs. Very generous of you. You guys are now 62 subs towards your goal. Thank you very much, folks.
The standard of the time. Actually, it's such a hopeful, incredible story. It's a beautiful thing. And it was violently destroyed. You know, once you see that, and once you have that in your heritage, once you know what I mean, understand that, once you understand that Martin Luther King could be standing up, telling his own people, we do not embrace violence at all. It is morally repugnant. We embrace love. And that could get you shot. Not burn it down. Love can get you shot. You know, you just have a different view of your country. You know, it is not, I emphasize this over and over again, it is not a fatalistic view. It is not, it is written in stone that we will ultimately lose, but you understand that losing is a possibility.
But so then what does that, there's a Buddhist meditation I like. This is a weird place to go. But it goes like this. I'm of the nature to grow sick. I'm of the nature to grow old. I'm of the nature to lose the people I love. I'm of the nature to die. How then shall I live? And
love that.
Yeah, I do it because sometimes you need the reminder. Yeah. what I hear you saying in a way is we are of the nature too.
Yeah.
And I think the place I'm trying to push is then how then shall we live? Because in this distinction you're making between like you would have been there correctly yelling at FDR. And I'm not like asking you, but like me, right? Like my work, my role.
Can you answer that? Can you say what you, I think it's a good point. Would you define for me how you see like what your role is?
I don't know what my role is anymore. I'll be totally honest with you, man. I feel very conflicted about that question.
Yeah, I feel approximately, I don't know, a year and a half away from being a very different kind of role. Maybe with some kind of conservative think tank. I don't know. I'm just spitballing though. I'm just spitballing some of these ideas though. About a year and a half. Give me after the midterms, and I think I'll figure out a way to solve this inner conflict that's raging within me, with a lot of money from conservative consultants.
The role I want to have is a person curiously exploring his political and intellectual interests in political peacetime, and the role I somehow have is sometimes that. I am in the business. I'm a political opinion writer and podcaster and so on. And I'm in the business of political persuasion. And I feel like me and the people who believe what I believe, not narrowly speaking, but, like the whole broad coalition, have failed in a really consequential way.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Because you're sitting here and telling people that what you really need to do, what you really need to do is talk to more of my political opponents. Surely giving my political opponents and my ideological opposition more screen time and airtime, surely that will solve the problem of the crushing defeat we've been suffering for years. This is just nuts. This is just nuts. It's nonsensical.
And I think it is.
You feel like you failed in your work.
I think there are places I failed. I mean, I think there are things I got right too. Like I think we shouldn't have run Joe Biden again. I think I was right about that. I think I've gotten a lot right. But I think I've gotten definitely things wrong. But I think we are here now, right? That's what I would really say. And it is forcing me to rethink things I would prefer not to rethink. I will give you an example because people are mad at me on this one right now.
Please.
I said in a podcast with my colleague, Russ Douthat, he was pushing me on left radicalism. I was saying, I don't care about left-wing radicalism. I don't think it's some great threat. I don't think it's a huge political problem. I worry about left-wing pessimism, fatalism, that we are losing and don't want to change anything. And I said that the question for me is, how do we win Senate seats in places like Kansas and Missouri and Ohio? I said, I would like to see us doing things like in red states, and here I meant redder than those, running pro-life candidates. People got real upset about that, and I get why.
Do you though?
But in 2010,
do you though?
When the Affordable Care Act passed, there were 40 House Democrats who were pro-life at some level. You had to do this whole negotiation with this guy, Bart Stupak.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. And on the bright side, you don't have to have those negotiations now. And on the downside, you can't pass the Affordable Care Act. And the point is not that issue, right? That one issue, although things like, the example, say Susan Collins, where she's in theory pro-choice, but she votes for Mitch McConnell and John Thune as leader. Right. Like that's how you build power on some level, right? If you have those, Joe Manchin, like I wish he were still a senator from West Virginia, as much as I have deep disagreements with him.
Oh my God, fuck you.
I think that
just fuck you,
man.
What good are you?
I think you are a person, whether you admit it or not, who is one of the people with a, voice in shaping what our political culture is. And I believe at some level that political strategy is downstream from political culture. I think it means exploring things that are uncomfortable and being pretty disciplined in a way maybe I haven't been about separating the question of what I believe from what I believe will win power. because I currently think that the cost of losing power is horrifying and dangerous, and we can't keep doing it. So that's where my head is.
Can we start with that exactly? Because the immediate thing, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the immediate thing that springs to mind for me in that question is not who you're abandoning, but how do you square the fact that, in fact, reproductive rights has proven to be pretty popular in red states? And I'm thinking about referendums that have been passed.
That's a great question, Ta-Nehisi Coates. Thank you for asking it directly to him, because I feel like I'm going fucking crazy.
It's that they've had to, change the rules. Like, how do you separate that?
When I sort of said this in glancingly.
Like, there are people who didn't vote for Kamala, but give me my reproductive rights.
I think that I was using first pro-life as an illustrative example. Okay. But there are many red districts in this country. And there are states that we do not even think about competing in anymore, right? I'm not talking about Ohio here. I think you have to try things. By the way, not only moderation.
Good night, Gamer G.
You could try going much harder on economic populism, which some people are trying. I think you might need to combine those two strategies, right? Which is sort of the Dan Osborne in Nebraska approach. I think that I think even before the question of what your policies are, and I believe this very deeply, there's a question of whether or not people feel like you respect them and like them, even if they disagree with you.
You know what's incredible to me, right? You know what's absolutely incredible? We just hit the hour mark in this conversation, and not a word, not one word out of Ezra Klein's mouth has engaged with the idea that working class people need help. Not a word has passed his lips at all, even pointing in the general direction of the fact that, hey, working class people are struggling. It's harder and harder to afford food. It's harder and harder to afford rent. It is harder and harder to exist in this country if you are a normal working person. And not a word about how the Democrats have abandoned that kind of person and how that goes downstream to them losing these places like Oklahoma and Missouri. Ezra is all about trying out more conservative approaches, more conservative rhetorical appeals. Not a word about working class ideas. Not a word about working class, economic development. And it bothers me because he makes all of this lip service to, the social issues, as if the social issues were it. But that's all. A lot of the social issues are dressing. They're distraction for conservatives. Conservatives broadly support it, of course, but they support it like a baby claps for jingling keys. Ultimately, the reason they support it is because they think, oh, well, maybe on some level economically things will get better for me. But also, hey, look at all these jingling keys over here. And the reality is that what needs to happen is that Democrats need to come in and address the fundamental issue and tackle it head on, honestly and completely, which is that they need to fill the void. They need to fill the void. They need to clearly talk to the main constituents of this country, the working class of this country, and point to them, hey, your enemy is not trans people in your community. Your enemy is not, immigrants in your community. Your enemy is not, people who don't speak English in your community. Your enemy is the billionaire class that is robbing you blind. Your enemy are the people who spend hundreds of millions of dollars every year to keep you from realizing that they're robbing you blind. Your enemy is the people who are closing down your factory and moving those jobs overseas, not the workers overseas. Your enemy is the person who is doing that so they can pocket tens of millions of dollars in profit at the end of the year. You need to clearly have that line drawn. And the issue is Democrats, the kind that Ezra Klein likes anyway, are unwilling to draw that line because they benefit from the same billionaires that Republicans do. And what we are seeing happen here in the United States is very similar to what, transpired in the UK with Labour. The Labour Party saw the collapse of the Conservative government, stepped in, and immediately became as conservative as Labour. It is deeply unserious. It is a deeply unserious shell game. And we cannot, if we want to maintain our society, if we want to improve things somewhat, we cannot entertain this deeply unserious set of ideas that simply seeks to set the stage for Democrats becoming the new Republicans after Trump is gone and the Republican Party collapses to infighting. We can't have that.
Before I think people will give you power, they don't even ask, do they like you? They ask whether you like them. And I think a lot of the country feels we don't like them.
You know what? I gotta be honest. People don't give a fuck if you like them or not. People do not give a fuck if you like them or not. What they care about is, are you going to respect their constitutional rights? Are you not going to discriminate against them? Cool. Are you going to fight for the betterment of their workplace and their working conditions and their pay? Cool. Guess what? Do those two things, people will be on board with you. It is not a simple matter of like, oh man, they said mean things about me. I'm a trans person. I'm a socialist. I come online every day on a platform a minuscule fraction the size of Ezra Klein's. And people are mean in my comments nonstop. I get it all the time. But you know what blows my mind? It doesn't. More and more people are convinced by the positions I hold every day because I fight for them. Because I believe it. Because this isn't simply a game about being liked, it is a game about building power. And power is not predicated on whether or not people like you interpersonally. It is predicated on whether or not people believe in your ideas. It is predicated on getting people to cooperate. And that cooperation can be done with people you dislike. Would it be better if everyone liked each other all the time? Sure, I guess. But I don't need to like my coworker to start a union with them. I don't need to like another person in order to fight for their civil rights. It's called having principles. It's called believing in something, and it's called giving a shit.
Do I believe that? I know that. I've seen the focus groups. I've seen the survey data. I've talked to the people who work on this. And that's going to require, changing that is going to require making moves that somehow send a loud enough signal that people begin to think we have changed it at some level. Sherrod Brown should be able to win in Ohio.
Yes.
The reason he cannot win in Ohio is the Democratic Party itself is a millstone around his neck that drags him down. So what do you do about I'm not here to tell you I got the answer.
Yeah.
What I would feel much better about is if I felt there was a strategic discipline about finding it.
So I just if you will take this very gentle pushback.
Yeah, please.
I think
you're here for it.
I haven't seen exactly what people are saying, online in terms of this, but I do think what immediately strikes me is if you take, I know you would just, it's not, the example necessarily that you would hold out, about reproductive rights. But I think the problem with musing about that is abandoning it is a very real possibility for people who don't have the option necessarily to fly to another state or do X, Y, and Z. So I suspect when they hear somebody of your status, even if it's not the example you mean, putting it out in the air, they feel, and it's not just that you're putting it out in the air, it's putting it out in the air. And actually, I don't necessarily even mean that one. No, but if you're going to say that, I think you really gotta,
I'll stand behind
it.
You
gotta put the data behind it. I think that's really, really important.
I will say, and I think this is actually the nub of it, right? Okay. I'm glad we're sort of here. I am saying the thing it sounds like I am saying, to be very, very clear.
Right.
Okay, then why have you been running the fuck away from it for the last several weeks? Come on, man. Fuck off. Yeah, well, I meant what I said. Okay. Cool.
I think in a place like Nebraska, you should try to run some pro-life Democrats.
Why? Nebraskans support abortion rights. These states support abortion rights. Why would you capitulate for no reason? What is wrong with you? God damn it. I don't understand this commitment to losing.
I wish people, instead of saying that an expressive or strategic question in politics was betraying or abandoning the people we wish to protect, I wish what we said was we lost power in a way that allowed Donald Trump to drive the Supreme Court to a 6-3 Republican majority. And that majority overturned Roe v. Wade. Right. It overturned Roe v. Wade and actually abandoned all these people. Right. Actually fucked them over. Right?
Right.
It is part of, I think, when I say that like the work of politics has become diminished, it is part of how that happened, that talking about this creates this sort of counter argument. Well, even to discuss it is to abandon. In 2008, as you and I both know, Barack Obama ran as a public opponent of gay marriage.
Right.
He ran opposed to it.
Right.
At a time when not only, I won't speak for you, was I not opposed to it, but most of us did not, most of us did not think he was opposed to it.
Right.
Like at his heart, we did not think he was opposed to it.
Right.
But he was playing politics.
Right.
That playing of politics allowed him to name Supreme Court justices, and that led to the decision that created a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And I am saying that that kind of playing politics is needed.
I can give you an example from the other side, by the way, too.
Yeah, go for it.
Brother, you know what my position was during the election about Palestine.
Mm-hmm. Yo, so much respect to him. So much respect to him. He has come a long way. Unless he's about to backtrack, Ta-Nehisi Coates has come a long way and eaten a lot of crow over this position that has aged horribly.
About Gaza. Kamala Harris was running to be the first Black woman to be president of the United States. You cannot imagine how animated Black folks were. And some would argue the base of the Democratic Party, Black women. You know what I mean? We're going to, see this thing. She was not taking a position that I thought was particularly moral. I had to talk in front of Black audiences about that. You know what I mean? And I had to do the other thing, which was go before Arab American audiences here, Palestinian American audiences here, and say, look, I'm with you. You can be mad at me. You probably will be mad at me. I get it. But for me, politics is the lesser of two evils. We've been fighting this battle for a long time. We have never had the luxury of electing people that represented the best of us. And this is why I'm voting for her. This is a really, really serious thing. And when you hear these Palestinian Americans, and when you hear these Muslim Americans, and when you hear these Arab Americans upset about this, you can't just yell at them. You have to take them seriously. These were hard, very, very difficult conversations. But when I made those conversations, look, man, I had to be buttoned up about it. I just think you take very, very seriously the need to convince people outside of the tent right now, right? About like we have to convince them to come in. I guess what I want from you is I want you to take as seriously people who are in the tent and who are vulnerable and afraid. And if you have to convince them of something that's extremely, extremely uncomfortable, or tell them that you're taking a position that is extremely uncomfortable, I just think you owe them a little more. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
man.
That's fine. I'll take it. But I want to put this on you for a minute, right? Sure. You keep sort of putting it back on me.
Yeah, I'm open. Go ahead. I won't.
You keep putting it back on me here on the Ta-Nehisi Coates show. What then should we do? What then should be? You are one of the most influential public intellectuals in the country. I know you don't like to think of politics as a thing you do, but it is a thing you do. What, as bad as you know this can get, and given that you're not a hopeless person, or who, doesn't think you should just collapse into fatalism, what do you think should happen now?
I think that really depends on what your role is. I don't have a great overarching theory for what everybody needs to do, because I think we all have different positions. I know what my role is. And I do see myself as part of politics, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's a very, very important way of answering the question. I mean, I'm not going to be the person that yells at you because, you know, you went on a bunch of right-wing podcasts. You know, as I've said many times, you know, in the course of this interview, I see myself as a writer. I see myself as a journalist. I see myself as someone for whom it's very, very important to state the truth plainly and to clarify things as best I can. I'm not a strategist for the party, you know, and I've tried to, as you raised in that Barack Obama piece, I've tried to respect the difference.
I guess I'm not pushing you to be a political strategist, right? I think that for me, something you see me doing right here, something I think people reacting to me doing is saying, well, if the fight is this profound and we're losing the fight, then the question is to think about how we fight.
Right.
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 That's something about knowing that this much of the country is, on the wrong side of what my line would have been.
Right.
Knowing that what Kirk was doing, what people like him were doing was working.
Right.
That imposes a set of questions upon us that need to be answered.
Right. The thing I'm struggling with in this conversation and even in that question is the fact that there are things that you yourself have actually advocated for that had they been done, we would be having a very different conversation.
I think I wanted to not be close.
You said what?
I wanted to not be close.
You will call this my fatalism, but I am not surprised. I think it's going to be close. I think it'll be close for a very, very long time. I would like for it to be less close too. But
do you think that's within our power or not really?
Listen, I have a friend, and I'm not going to out him. He's a mutual friend of ours who always says, this is the best set of white folks we have ever had in the entire history of Black America. This is the most woke. This is the least racist. This is the most aware group that we have had. You know what I mean? Like for us, and for those of us who ground ourselves in a larger tradition, this is not close. Like this is a remarkable time. You know, in terms of our freedom, you know, as writers and journalists to speak to people, in terms of the amount of people who are empowered and have some amount of privilege and could just look away and are not looking away. You know, it's not a great time politically. You understand what I'm saying? But it's just, it's not the worst either.
No, it's not.
It's not the worst, you know?
All right, then. I think always our final question. What are 3 books you'd recommend to the audience?
So the first book is a book called The Brothers by Stephen Kinzer, which is a joint biography of Allen Dulles and John Foster Dulles, and how incredibly one was head of the State Department, the other was head of the CIA, and how they worked to overthrow multiple countries during Eisenhower's time. It's just an incredible, mind-boggling book, and it's helping me answer some questions about the role of America in the broader world. The second one is an oldie but goodie, which I've reached for before I wrote my piece, is Race and Reunion by David Blight, which I think is just essential because it shows how a country forgets, and forgets in service of a politic that I would say is problematic. The third one is our mutual friend Chris Hayes' book, Siren's Call, which I think, in fact, actually tells us a lot about the conversation that we're having today, you know, and the influence of social media screens and distraction.
Ta-Nehisi Coates, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ezra. I appreciate it too.
Holy fuck, Ta-Nehisi Coates like blew his fucking back out. That was nuts. That was crazy. I don't think I've ever been this upset by a left-leaning intellectual type. The Ezra Klein gets under my skin like basically no one else. And I've watched like all of the heinous conservative right-wing dipshits. I have watched so many of them, and not a one of them gets under my skin quite like Ezra Klein does. I feel like that was 75% Ezra talking. Yeah, and the other 25% being Ta-Nehisi Coates being like, Doesn't that seem really fucked up though? And then Ezra Klein talks for another 10 minutes about how, well, actually, yes, it is kind of fucked up. And I do believe exactly what I said anyway. And I do believe in those fucked up things. So how dare people be upset that I believe these fucked up things and advocate for them on a platform that is paid attention to by all of the prominent Democrats in the United States. How dare anyone hold me accountable for my actions and beliefs that I express all the time? But what if we have no principles? What if we have no principles and just take large checks? You know, have you ever considered folks? Have you ever considered just not being working class and instead accepting very large checks? Be like Ezra Klein. Artisanal butt air. Fine vintage, aged for years. I'm just shell-shocked by the vacuousness of it, you know? I really enjoyed Ta-Nehisi Coates basically just playing the role of an actual fucking human being, and Ezra Klein flailing, totally incapable of actually dealing with that fact. Yeah, Ezra Klein is just the newfangled version of let's make it like the good old days. It's crazy. Anyway, glad we're done with that. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Do the things.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather around. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the scenes. Politics, dating, flame more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.